He's Frank Schwab. I'm Jason Fitz. It is late Sunday night for inside coverage as we begin taping this, Frank, immediately after watching overtime. We win. I don't think we've ever done this before. I don't think we've ever had a taping post overtime. And so I felt conflicted, my friend. I'm going to be honest with you because we're going to go through every game. It's what we do on this show every single Sunday. But when it hit overtime, I thought, man, the football fan in me loves that we're getting bonus football, free football. Who doesn't love that? But then the worker in me was like, man, that means we're going to be taping super late. So it's late for us.
The dabbler in me like that the Lions covered in overtime or whatever. That's another story for another day. Look, all last week, what did I tell you? Week 1 is the gold. It is the second best thing on the sports calendar other than the first couple days of March Madness. And my goodness, did it deliver. This is honestly one of my favorite shows. Let me start over with that. This is my favorite show of the year. It is awesome because there is so much to talk about after week 1. There's always crazy storylines. There's always crazy results, some of which were predictions of things to come, some of which they just won't replicate ever. I don't think the New England Patriots are going 14-3 or anything, but week 1 is awesome. It delivered in a big time way this time. I just can't wait to talk about all these games with you.
As a dabbler, by the way, I got to give a shout out to my friend Steve. He had played a parlay today for $10, right? Sent a couple of us a text as we were going into the last game. He needed one thing to hit. And that one thing, this was difficult. He needed a touchdown and a field goal from both teams in both halves of tonight's game, right? That's all he needed. And that $10 bet would have moved to an $1,800 win. That's how many parlays he got right. That interception thrown at the end of the first half in the end zone is the only thing that prevented him from winning. So I think Steve at this point has quit all football. Let's start with the Sunday night matchup. Overtime, we get a 26-20 win. Detroit takes down the Rams, and it really was. I felt like it was the perfect nightcap to a perfect day because this was two teams that both just looked like they are going to have seasons. This was a good matchup. It was cleaner football than we saw for a lot of the day. And it was a reminder that, these two teams both look like they're set to be really good this season.
Really well coached. Let's start with the Rams, just because I need to shout out the effort they gave. Look, this team, they're down 17-3. They're losing a ton of linemen. Already came into the game without their left tackle who was suspended. Puka Nacua hurts his knee again. I hope that's not serious. I worry. Same knee that he hurt through August that kept him out. I just wonder where this is going for Nacua. If you come right back, you get hurt right away. I don't know if it's the same injury. We'll see. We'll see with Puka. Obviously, you didn't like to see him go out of the game. And when you're down 17-3 at Detroit, very shorthanded, you're just like, okay, well, that's fine. It's not their day. They have next week. It's one game out of 17. But no, the Rams did the opposite of packing it in. They fought their behinds off, especially Matthew Stafford, who is just having this awesome late career surge. After the 2022 season, I thought he might retire, really. The injuries, the concussions. At very least, I thought, he's going to come back and this isn't going to be pretty. And what he has done the past 2 seasons has been nothing short of remarkable. He was awesome last year. He was awesome tonight. He dragged that team into this game and almost had the win. Cooper Kupp was awesome. Like, this was just... the Lions won. We'll give them their flowers. They deserve to win, especially with how they ran the ball in overtime. But I come out of this game saying, wow, what an effort by the Rams. Again, got to see about Nakua's injury. That could really affect their season if it's bad. But you come out of this, if you're the Rams, saying, yeah, we lost, and that stinks. But you know what? We lost an overtime field goal to the Detroit Lions on the road. We fought that hard with our linemen. Our offensive line was just glued together at the end. It was really, really impressive performance by the Rams, even in a loss.
I never want to take for granted the fact that these are two quarterbacks for each team that was given up on for whatever reason by other teams that just felt like they had to get a different spot. There just needed to be a change of scenery. These are two quarterbacks that, frankly, this could have gone the wrong way for both of them going into new locations. And instead, it feels like each of them has just become more beloved because of it. As they went out to take the coin toss for overtime, they pointed it out on the broadcast, how special it was to see two guys that are still bonded with that city of Detroit. And you can feel that. Like, Stafford obviously still gets a ton of love, but you're right. Watching both of them play right now and remembering what we thought of each of them just a few years ago, it's just different. Stafford has taken another step, and Goff is absolutely in control at all times. And you mentioned overtime. It's important to note, frankly, the Rams were gassed. Whoever won the coin toss, I think, was going to have a huge advantage.
I agree with that.
They just ran the ball right down their throats. That's going to happen right now. And I was impressed that the Lions took that lead, but then also when they lost that lead, they never panicked. There's a calm to what the Lions do, and it's one game sample, but there is a we belong, we're here, and we're used to it feel the way this game went down that really impressed me, because last year, so much of the conversation was, well, what is going to happen now that the Lions are one of the hunted? Well, the Lions were being hunted and had no problem with that throughout the course of this game. I think it was a real statement for the Lions to say, hey, we're up, we're down, we're up, we're fine.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. There was a calm, they didn't seem like they were panicked in any way. They didn't go for it with about 4.5 minutes to go. I wondered, is Dan Campbell going for it here? He's like, no, our defense is fine. We're going to get the ball back. And they did. After a crazy throw by Matthew Stafford on third down to get a first down, they finally did get the stop they needed. The positives for the Lions, Jameson Williams looked great. Like he's going to be a real impact guy. Like he has a lot of talent, and he's going to have some games where he just flips a game. Like he's got that kind of ability, and you saw it tonight. And I thought, look, the precursor to what happened in overtime, there was a 4th and 2 early in the game. And in that situation, not many teams run it up the middle. But I think the Lions have such confidence in their offensive line that they just said, we're going to have David Montgomery right up the middle. We're going to get this yardage. And they did. Montgomery got 3 yards. They got the first down. And that stuck with it in my head. And then you get the overtime. And like you said, the Rams are gassed at that point. And nothing, what can you do? But it still was impressive to see the Lions run the ball 7 out of 8 times in that overtime drive and just get chunks of yards. They were just moving the pile. David Montgomery was running hard. The Lions can beat you in different ways. They can't throw the heck out of the ball. I mean, Jared Goff has been 4,500-yard passer the last couple of years. But the root of this team, this Dan Campbell team, is that offensive line where they have the confidence to just say, you know what? If we just want to bully you around today, we can do that. Like we're perfectly happy getting in a street fight with you. And that's what happened in overtime. Now, real quick, look, the Lions are in a different spot right now. We're not just patting them on the head and saying, hey, you're 1-0 and nothing else. None of the problems matter because you're 1-0. We do have to look under a microscope with the Lions. They had a really, really tough time defending anybody tonight, especially Cooper Kupp. We talked all last season about how bad their secondary was, how they gave up too many big plays. They went out and got a ton of cornerbacks. Well, it didn't really work tonight. Matthew Stafford's great. Cooper Kupp was great. It still doesn't mean you could allow him to throw for more than 300 yards, 34 of 49, I believe he was. Some issues in the secondary they still need to work on. And you do have to, there is some concern about blowing a 17-3 lead at home and being in that position at all. We could be having a much different conversation about the Detroit Lions if the Rams pick up one more first down, but you can work through all those problems at 1-0. It's a lot easier.
Well, there's also a lot of youth in that secondary, right? And they had to press late in the game. They were pressed into action. I think that youth puts you a little bit uneasy, right? Because if you think about it, this Lions team is built to take some big leads, which means they're going to be facing a lot of teams that are throwing the ball a lot. That youth is going to have to grow up quickly to be able to show that they can handle the workload they're going to get throughout the course of the season. I think it's fair to look at that and say, hey, still an incomplete grade on that, but it is also week 1, right? And so we talk about how bland preseason football is. All these guys now are facing the real thing, and that's a much different beast, right? And I do want to go back to one thing you mentioned on the offensive line too. The next time somebody questions an offensive line being drafted high, offensive lineman being drafted high, I just want to use this game as a great example of shut up, right? Penei Sewell and the way he played in this game is a reminder of why you go, if you've got the guy available to, I say this every year, I will echo this, we saw it today. There are not 32 starting caliber left tackles and 32 starting caliber right tackles currently in the NFL. There are not many offensive lines that I can look left or right and say, you know what? All 5 of these guys are elite. It just doesn't really exist. So if you can draft somebody that comes in and makes an immediate impact, man, it is such a difference maker. Fans just need to calm down and just trust whenever their favorite team drafts an offensive lineman that is a smart thing to do, because frankly, they're hard as hell to find and nobody lets them go if they're any good once they're in the league.
Yeah, and I mean, look at the Chargers. We'll talk about them later, but,
do we have to?
It's certainly the style they want to play, and they played it today. Sorry, Fitz. But yes, I mean, this Lions offensive line, maybe the Eagles, but probably the Lions best in football, and that's a great place to start. And then you pair that with all the speed they have at the skill positions. Really tough runner in David Montgomery, a very capable quarterback in Jared Goff. I think the key for them, though, is just, where is the secondary at? Is it good? Was this just, like you said, you got a lot of young guys getting their first taste of the NFL, Matthew Stafford playing out of his mind. They were in a bad game script, so they're passing a lot anyway. Or Was this just, well, the Lions haven't fixed their problem? That's going to be the key, the difference between, are the Lions just a good team that's going to win a division and flame out in the playoffs, or can they win a Super Bowl? It's all about that secondary. The first test wasn't great. You can't say it was, but like you said, early in the season, these young guys will grow up. We'll see where the secondary evolves to.
From the last game of the weekend to the first game we haven't talked about of the whole weekend, because frankly, Inside Coverage, we're with you every Wednesday, every Friday. So we already recapped Thursday, but we haven't had the chance to talk about one of the other key games of the weekend, the Eagles and the Packers. That's the Eagles win 34-29 over Green Bay. That was the game that really kicked off the weekend after Thursday night down in Brazil on Friday. Frank, obviously Packers fans still puckered up. Nobody knows what to expect. We know that Jordan Love is going to miss a little time, but also, I'm just going to say this, Jordan Love didn't look spectacular in the time that he was in there. And you know that I've been critical. I'm not going to say that like this is a panic moment. This is a little what I expected. There was a little bit of a regression in Jordan Love. There were some late throws over the middle that just didn't make a lot of sense. There were times that I looked at this and thought, with this Packers team.
Didn't play well. It really didn't. It was fine. They played well enough to put up 29 points. It wasn't an abject disaster or anything.
Sure.
But he didn't really play well. But that doesn't even matter right now because we're not even going to see him for a month or so. It blew my mind that when the news came out Saturday that he had a sprained MCL, everybody was like, "Oh, this is really great, positive news." No, it's not. Like the Green Bay Packers are in a really, really bad place right now. We have seen Malik Willis play football. It is not good. He is not an NFL quarterback. He's just not. Look, prove me wrong, Malik, but every time he had a chance to play for the Tennessee Titans, he was bad. And I don't know that he's gotten that much better, especially since they just traded for him on August 27th. If that's the route they go, if it's Sean Clifford, there's a reason he was demoted to the practice squad for a guy who they just traded for 2 weeks ago. Maybe you go, I don't know, get a Ryan Tannehill or something, but I don't see any way out for the Packers here. I don't know how they win games without Jordan Love. Let's say he misses 3 games. All right. You're maybe 0-4 at that point. And Jordan Love's coming back. And the history of guys returning from an injury like this, a high ankle sprain or sprained MCL or anything like that, it lingers for a long time. It's not like Jordan Love is going to show up on October 8th or whenever he's going to play his next game, and he's just going to be 100% Jordan Love, the guy we saw late last season. He's going to struggle for a while. He might struggle for a couple months after that. I don't know that the Packers, I hate to say this after one game, but I don't know if the Packers can make the playoffs anymore. If they do, I'd be very, very impressed because they're going to have to survive this stretch without Jordan Love. And then they're going to have to kind of survive with Jordan Love being a shell of himself. I just don't know when Jordan Love's going to be healthy again. This is a bad, bad deal for the Packers. If you said, hey, this is positive news, oh my God, like what are you even thinking? That was so ridiculous to me. Yes, I guess he's not out for the season and that's good, but I think the Packers are in a really, really, really bad spot here. And again, if they make the playoffs, I'd almost just assume Matt LaFleur wins Coach of the Year because it would be a pretty impressive accomplishment.
The opposite, though, is the Eagles, right? Like that offense, my God. And we can talk all day long about Saquon. Right. Saquon not facing stacked boxes made all the difference in the world, right? Saquon being one of a million different people that are effective on that team, the weapons that are everywhere, they were still able to execute brotherly shove with the level of impact that I didn't expect. I mean, if you're an Eagles fan, you walked away from it and said, okay, there were some questionable throws by Jalen Hurts. I'm not gonna deny that. He had a couple of boneheaded moments where you think, what the hell are you doing with the ball right there? That's kind of who he is and his identity. But man, there are so many weapons around him. This is a type of offense that can beat you a million different ways. So I think the Eagles sort of struck fear in the hearts of the rest of the NFC with that win.
Yeah, I hate to even take too much from that game. We didn't talk on Friday night. We didn't text her, I think. So we haven't talked about this game. Did this game feel completely weird to you? Like totally disjointed? And I was sitting there by the end of the game and saying, I don't even know if I could take anything from this game. Usually, early in the season, I'm really, really studying these teams to try to figure out who's who, what's fluky, what's not. And by the end of that game, I mean, of course, for the Love injury and all that, like, what do you take out of this game? Everything seemed weird about it. The broadcast seemed weird. The players were slipping around the entire first half. It seemed like they all just kind of had jet lag from coming over from the States. And it seemed that way to you. This game just seemed weird to me.
The slick field flat out pissed me off.
Yes.
I'm anti-international games anyway because you're stealing a home game from a team that deserves it. But the fact that they put a meaningful game between two conference rivals that are supposed to be in the playoff picture together, right? That will have, in theory, playoff implications to everybody on an international field with a crowd that was sort of into it, sort of not, and on a field that was slick for whatever reason. I mean, they spent how much of the broadcast talking about different cleats that were being used because it was such an issue. What are we doing? Like, why do we care about the expansion of the brand of football more than we care about actually seeing good football between two teams that will be playing meaningful football all year long? It made absolutely no sense to me. And watching it, I just thought this is a reminder that, yes, I understand the league wants to grow in popularity. Yes, I understand it's all about money. If we're going to acknowledge all of those things, that's fine. But can't we also acknowledge that that sucks and that was a terrible thing to do to two teams that have a lot to play for?
Yeah, and look, people like replaying the Jordan Love injury on the turf. No, don't do that. Like, I know you're desperate to dunk on the NFL here. It wasn't a turf, but it doesn't excuse the fact that the turf was that bad. And yes,
it just made for bad football too. Like the cuts on the routes were just running backs falling in the backfield. It's like, what are we supposed to take from that? Because all of a sudden, instead of being 2nd and 8, it's 2nd and 14 because somebody just falls on their face. Like, that's a huge difference.
A huge difference. And it's one of those things where if you just play this, like, again, there were some big plays, there was some excitement, it was close at the end, so it wasn't like the worst game I've ever seen in my life, but obviously the quality of play was affected by the weird setting here. And if you play that game at Lambeau Field or at the Link, I think it's just a fantastic game between two of the probably 10 best teams in football. And we didn't get that because the guys were slipping around. There was one play, Emmanuel Wilson stopped and he just kept sliding. I thought he was going to slide all the way to the end zone. Like, it was just weird and bad. And so I don't want to even, other than obviously Saquon looks really, really good. I think you could take that away. And obviously the injury for Jordan Love just kind of wrecks the Packers season, I think, anyway. I think that's kind of obvious. Other than that, I don't know. Like, I don't really know what to make of anything. I could sit here and be like, oh, the Eagles defense, it gave up too many big plays and too many points again. But it's like, well, can I judge them when you can't even get your footing for more than half of football? Like, I just kind of almost am erasing this from my mind, other than, obviously the Packers have a real big problem going forward.
Let's look at another game that everybody wants to erase from their minds, because let's just face it, I don't know that I've ever seen any game in week 1 destroy more survival pools than we saw today.
It was Houston at Miami week 1. This had to be like 2015, maybe. But the carnage, yes. Go ahead, because I'm out of mine. Yep.
I mean, the Patriots take down the Bengals 16-10. That's not a misspeak.
Fitz. I told you. I was like, we're going to sit here on Sunday night saying, well, how did the Patriots do it? Because this is the NFL, dude. Like, this is what the NFL does to us.
The Bengals were picked by 43.6% of Yahoo survival pool players. So that means automatically 44% of the survivor pools, they're done. 16-10. There's so many shocking things about this because, and I can't say this loud enough, it wasn't a pretty win for New England. It wasn't like New England came in and shocked the world. Like, Jacoby Brissett was okay, right? Like, Jacoby Brissett was like, it was fine. The offense was fine. And the stunning part of this is that the Bengals just looked terrible.
I know. And you just wonder, like, Cincinnati just gets off to slow starts. Like, this is just what they do now. And it's confounding. Like, they have to figure something out here, because they're going to look back at this. Look, they could end up going 15-2. I don't know. But I assume anyway that we're going to be sitting here in December saying, yep, the Ravens have a 1-game lead on them because they blew that game against the Patriots in week 1. Like, it's going to linger all season for them. They look terrible. And I get that, like, T. Higgins was out. I get that Jamar Chase probably wasn't his normal self because of all the stuff going on there, but that's the Bengals' fault too. That contract should be done by now. It just seemed everything was off. Everything was bad. And I just, like, I'll flip it back to you. Do you think the Bengals are a bad team? Is just like their normal, weird, bad start? Like, it's tough to look at that game and how they struggled against honestly, a Patriots team that I said very, very bad things about for the entire offseason. Apologies to Jared Mayo and Patriots Nation out there, because, hey, you're 1-0. You got a pretty good win. Are the Bengals going to be bad? Like, are they going to be disappointing, or is this just a blip?
No, they're going to be fine. It's just all out of sorts. I mean, so when you read the stat line on Burrow, 21-29 for 164 yards, 164 yards on 21 completions. Like, that's not what we're used to at all from Joe Burrow. And you mentioned receiving, like, Jamar Chase still gets 6-62. The stunning thing to me is that they only tried to run the ball 16 times. 4 of those came from Joe Burrow. So one thing you're talking about is a limited number of snaps altogether. Like you're talking about 45 offensive snaps. There's no rhythm in that. You're also talking about no real attempt to actually establish the run in that process, which you have to do enough to at least stay on the field sometimes. It felt disjointed. It felt out of sync. It felt safe. It just didn't feel like the Bengals. And you're right. This is what happens every year. So I'm not gonna sit here and panic because I did that last year and I did that the year before. So I'm gonna look at it and say, well, that normalizes. But man, I also do think that it's fair to say the same conversation we had 48 hours ago. The AFC looks really difficult this year. Getting a wild card spot is not a given for anybody in the AFC. So every one of these games does matter. And to go out and win just an ugly game where Ramondre Stevenson ran all over you, right? And ran all over you at a decent clip, like with 120 yards. Exactly. And 120 yards with a long rush of 17, that tells you that they just kept pounding the ball over and over and over, and the Bengals had no answer for it. So kudos to the Patriots. They showed you they can grit out an ugly win, but also shame on you, Cincinnati, for just deciding that the first game of the season obviously doesn't matter. And this happens every year. So at some point, you got to learn from your own mistakes.
I did say all offseason that the one thing we lost on the Bengals is everybody just was like, Joe Burrow got hurt. That's why they didn't make the playoffs. No big deal. They'll be right back. When there was a lot of stuff under the hood that said the Bengals it wasn't just like, oh, Burrow got hurt, now their season is screwed. There was a lot of issues with the Bengals. I was a little skeptical on them coming into the season. I think I had them lower in the power rankings than everybody else. And I don't know if this is my victory lap. I'm definitely not doing that because, like you said, they just start slow. That's what they do. They'll probably be okay. There's a lot of talent there. But this loss, some doubts creep in my mind of maybe this team just isn't great. Maybe they're good. I don't think they're going to be terrible or anything, but this loss is not good. Now, I do have to talk about this. And we're going to talk about another coach who you know well, who did the same thing later in the day. But with about 2.5 minutes to go, the Bengals are down 6. It's 3rd and 10. They pick up 5 yards. Again, about 2.5 minutes to go. You're down 6. And I'm already thinking, before that play, I was already like, all right, if it's 4th and 10, you're probably going to go for it, but it's tough. They pick up 5 yards, and I'm like thinking about, okay, now they can pick up this 4th down, no big deal. And all of a sudden, I see the offense coming off the field. I'm like, what's going on? Are they faking this or something? Zach Taylor punted with 2.5 minutes to go, down 6. Why? Because you're at your own 15? Who cares? You're going to lose anyway. It doesn't matter if you lose by 6 or 13. I could not believe Zach Taylor punted in that situation. The Patriots get a first down. The Bengals never get the ball back. Why do these coaches screw this up so often? This is in the era of, hey, we're going to go for it all the time. The fact that a coach in 2024 would actually punt in that situation, when you know everybody is by now understands this is just dumb. Like, again, you're back at your own 15. Who cares? What difference does that make at that point? I could not believe Zach Taylor punted in that situation. And yes, Fitz, we'll get to your coach making the same decision later in the day.
This is called a tease. I'll tell you why I think it was actually a decision that made sense for the Raiders, but it is not a decision that made sense for the Bengals.
We're going to argue.
It didn't. Yeah, we are going to argue. The only thing I'd say to the Bengals is you got Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Like you, at some point, you paid all this money to one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and you've got a receiver that wants to be paid.
Burrow to pick up 5 yards, like more than. I mean, I get it. The Patriots don't have a good offense. You should be able to stop that. But even if you do, what's the upside to it? You're getting a ball back with like a minute to go, no timeouts, pinned up. What? Oh, I can't believe coaches still screw this up. It just drives me insane.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of coaching malpractice from the Bengals in this game, from the game plan to
not
the
just
execution of the game plan.
Yep. Not having that team ready. They clearly came into that game looking like, well, we're going to be 1-0. Like, Patriots stink. We're going to win. Like, they were flat the entire game. You could tell early on too. Like, obviously I had them in Survivor along with 44% of people. And you could tell early on, like, oh boy, this is not going to be easy. I still thought they'd win, but everything was flat for them from the beginning on.
And it doesn't get easier because now they head to Kansas City for week 2. So that's going to be a much tougher game for them. One other game that obviously stood out today that was really on our minds from the very first clip of the morning, because we wake up this morning and there were a couple of interesting pieces of news, one around Tyreek Hill that we'll talk about later, but also one about Dak Prescott. I've said I thought Dak was going to get $60+ million fully guaranteed to play somewhere else. Well, shame on me. Turns out he was getting that basically to go play for the Cowboys. As we find out this morning, a 4-year extension averaging $60 million a year, and 231 of that $240 million is guaranteed, which puts him above Deshaun Watson.
What's the point? What's the point?
I mean, God only knows.
They're only giving you 231 guaranteed, not all 240. Okay.
So
sure.
For all the offseason, oh my God, how are they ever going to pay these guys? CD got paid. Dak got paid. Everything's fine. So maybe when we're talking about Parsons in a year and wondering if he's going to get paid, we can all just shut the hell up. That's just some life advice on this. We can all shut up because the Cowboys find a way to get it done. They didn't need to find a way to get it done. They just went out and flat out whooped the snot out of the Browns 33-17 in this game. And the score was not that close.
It was not that close.
Right.
No.
It raises a very real question, Frank. I cannot believe after one game I'm saying this, but do the Cleveland Browns right now need to make a quarterback change? Because Deshaun Watson was dreadful, and he was absolutely the reason they lost this football game.
Yes. First of all, we were both higher on the Cowboys than most. Both of us blocked out the noise of, they didn't go all in. That means the Cowboys are going to stink this year. Cowboys look awesome. Like they're a good regular season team. I don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs. I really don't. But this team, there's a reason they've won 12 games each of the last 3 regular seasons. They're good. The Cowboys are good. They're going to be good again. They showed it today. They looked awesome. They really did. On the other side, now let's move on because, if you're the Cleveland Browns, at some point, you have to look your locker room in the eye and tell them, yeah, we really do think Deshaun Watson is our best option, guys. How do you believe that after what you've seen over the past 2 years? And on Sunday, when Deshaun didn't even try to throw the ball downfield. Now, look, they're going to make their excuses because they always make excuses for Deshaun Watson. This is what the Browns do. Today, it was, Deshaun Watson got hit too much. Kevin Stefanski was asked after the game, hey, what about your offense? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, Deshaun just got hit too much. Like, Deshaun fought all game, but you can't get the quarterback hit like that. Like, is there ever going to be any accountability for Deshaun Watson in the Cleveland organization? It's always they're providing cover for him. They're making excuses for him. It was that way when the injury lingered last year. It was that way with his poor play before that. It's always something where the Browns are like, actually, it's not Deshaun's fault. It's this, and this. When they have to look at themselves in the mirror and say, you know what? Jameis Winston gives us a better shot to win. I get Jameis is flawed. We all know Jameis. That story's been written. We know what you're getting with Jameis Winston, but you can't tell me that today Jameis Winston wouldn't have given them a better shot to win. Now, they might have lost anyway because your offensive line had a lot of issues. That is true. I'm not trying to take that away, but this team has to have a real honest-to-goodness self-reflection and say, why are we starting Deshaun Watson anymore if he can't play? Like, does Jameis give us a better shot to win? Honestly, I think the answer is yes. I don't know how long it's going to take for them to flip that switch. You almost have to see this through a little bit, but I just wonder if Deshaun Watson's shoulder is ever going to be right again. He literally couldn't throw a ball downfield. Like, whether that was the offensive line or just him, every pass was within 2-3 yards of the line of scrimmage. You're not going to win that way. He just looked terrible. The Browns looked terrible, and you wonder, are you just going to squander your whole season hoping that you somehow see the Deshaun Watson of 4 years ago? It's like, I think you said it, like, you have to have a real honest to goodness decision of, does Deshaun Watson start a quarterback for us all year? And I think the answer ultimately should be no, but he's got that contract. You traded so much for him. That's the only reason he's starting right now.
You can't worry about that. See, the thing of this
but they do, Fitz. That's the only reason he's starting right now.
But you can't, because like sunken cost is sunken cost. No matter what you pay, it is at this point, it is wildly irresponsible for the Cleveland Browns, as talented as they are and as good as their coaching staff is. It is wildly irresponsible for them to continue to start a quarterback that is less than, simply because they made a financial commitment to somebody that was not worth it. At some point, you got to step up, stand up, and say, you know what? I don't care about the money we spent. We got to win football games. Put him on the bench. Figure out another way. And I don't care if that's Jameis. I don't care if you're going out in the street to find somebody. I don't care if you're drafting somebody. What you know is Deshaun Watson cannot win you a Super Bowl at this point. It's done. It's over. He is not the quarterback he was. And we're all sort of dancing around these conversations because of the money, including the Browns, which is only disrespectful to the other players in that locker room. It's disrespectful to the fans. It's disrespectful to everybody that watches it. At some point, we can look at it, and I'm talking about Deshaun Watson, the football player, not Deshaun Watson, the man here, to be very clear. Deshaun Watson, the football player, is not good enough to lead the Cleveland Browns anymore, and he should not be the starter.
Yeah, I have a hard time disagreeing with anything you just said. Like I was high on the Browns coming into training camp. You heard me talk about them, maybe Super Bowl, whatever. And then in August, I had to back way off because you did not hear one report out of Cleveland like, wow, Deshaun Watson's having a great camp. None. Like it was like, this is concerning. And then obviously he misses the last preseason game with shoulder soreness. And you're like, this is bad. Like this is, and then I just gave up. I was like, I picked the Cowboys today. I was like, I just don't think the Browns have it in them, especially Deshaun Watson. And I was right about that one at least. So by the way, from overthecap.com, do you know how much dead cap money there is if they cut Deshaun Watson next offseason?
Oh, they can't cut. It was like $90 million, isn't it?
$172 million dead cap. Let's repeat that. $172 million dead cap if the Browns cut Deshaun Watson next offseason. That's ridiculous. He is going to be you have to go in a different direction of quarterback if he doesn't improve. But you're going to have be your third quarterback at a 72.6, I think it is, $1 million cap hit for each of the next 2 years? Like, I mean, they're screwed. Like, this is really, really, really bad for the Browns.
You can't cut him, but you got to bench him.
You just have him as your third quarterback. Like, I don't even know if he's like really a backup at this point. Like, look, this is an overreaction. I get it. It's 1 week. He might come on next week.
No, this isn't. Like, we've been so calm on this. Like, how many times in a row can we sit here and be like, well, Deshaun's going to get it right? I don't think this is an overreaction anymore. Like, because I do think the Browns are a Super Bowl caliber roster with a Super Bowl caliber head coach. Like, if you've got all of these pieces together, if I got to bench my $172 million dead cap hit, I'm going to bench him. And then I'm going to hope to God he doesn't retire. Like, I understand that, like, this all gets really complicated, but you know what's even more complicated? Going out there every single week and wasting another week of a team that's good enough to win because they got a quarterback that isn't good enough to win, and you're only playing him because you paid him. Like, that's just, it's gross.
And at least Jameis, it's not their worst option. Like, I get it. James, you're going to be so frustrated with the pick sixes and all that kind of stuff. He's still a guy who I believe threw for 5,000 yards in a season, too. He's not a total zero. Like, I get that he's going to make some backbreaking mistakes, but he's also going to make some plays. Like, that's what Jameis does. And I think at some point the Browns are going to have to gamble on that because if Deshaun Watson doesn't start looking better, and I'm talking about next week, like, it just can't continue like this.
And the Cleveland Browns, by the way, just to take a quick look at it, next week they have a Jags team that's better, right? They have a Jags team that played pretty well today. Then they get a little bit of an easy stretch, Giants, Raiders, Commanders. So we'll see. We'll see if they can get it worked out. One thing I know is that we have every single game to go through. That's right, all of them. We will do that when we come back. Frank, let's keep breaking down every single game from Sunday and start with one that I thought was actually particularly interesting, and that is a big win for the Steelers, 18-10 over the Falcons. I cannot believe I am saying that was the final score of that game because I sat here and said, oh my God, you got rid of Arthur Smith. Finally, you're going to be good. Finally, you're going to be able to score some points. Finally, it's going to feel explosive. And instead, it wasn't. It was just, this was a Falcons team that just looked out of whack the entire time.
Yes. Kirk Cousins didn't look right. And what was really concerning, a lot of people brought this up on Twitter with the stats, that basically Kirk Cousins has never played out of the pistol formation his entire career. And in this game, the Falcons were in either shotgun or the pistol formation. I believe it was like 96% of the snaps. And what does that tell you? That tells you Kirk Cousins can't move. Like, they don't trust him really to drop back at this point. Like, that's the only reasonable conclusion you can come to that. I just wonder, and Kirk didn't play particularly well. Now, the pass rush was in his lap a lot. The Steelers are still really, really good up front. TJ Watt's still unbelievable, all that kind of stuff. But the fact that Kirk didn't look good, the fact that they had to cater their offense to kind of, maybe because he can't move, really coming off that Achilles, really, really troubling for just week one. Look, 1 week you lose, big deal. You don't play well. They didn't play in the preseason. Maybe you're just rusty. Come back week two. But the fact that, again, they had to change their whole offense because maybe Kirk Cousins is just not healthy or even close. That is what's troubling to me for the Falcons going forward. I had high hopes for the Falcons this season, and I'm going to have to kind of pull that back because you just wonder, is Kirk Cousins healthy at all? And how long is it until we start hearing Michael Penix's name?
I've said on our shows for months, I don't trust a 3,472-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury. I'm 1-for-1 on that. We'll see how it looks on Monday night. But, man, I kept watching and thinking everything looked labored for Kirk Cousins. Everything looked just more difficult. And that just hamstrung the offense. On the flip side of it, we find out this morning that Justin Fields is, in fact, the starter because of calf tightness, which then raises the, again, conspiracy theory that maybe they just always knew that Justin Fields was going to be the starter. And it was an efficient game. I mean, if you look at the stat line for Justin Fields, 17-23 for $156, quarterback rating is just under 92, and typical to him, 14 carries, 57 yards. He added something on the ground, which he always does. Like, there was an extra element to it. So I thought it was a fairly clean game for Justin. No touchdowns, no picks. I kept looking at that thinking, man, if it was a tie, if you were looking at it saying, I don't know, there's not really a discernible difference between Russ and Justin. Justin didn't do anything this week that would make me think he shouldn't be the starter moving forward.
I don't know what they're going to do. Mike Tomlin's very stubborn about this issue, but it's hard for me to believe that they don't have Justin Fields as their quarterback in week 2, even if Russ is back. I mean, again, it's never all that pretty with Justin Fields. We understand there's flaws to his game, but he does make things happen. He can complete passes. He can make big plays with his legs. He's going to miss some passes. That's what he does, but still 17-23. He was, again, perfectly reasonable today as your quarterback, and you just won a game against an Atlanta team everybody thought was going to win that division, including me. I don't know how you turn back. I don't know why you'd start Russ in week 2, especially going to Denver, which is going to be just horrible for him because the fans really are out for blood. I don't know. I think Justin Fields has to be their starter, but we'll see what Mike Tomlin has to say because, again, he's been very stubborn about this whole Russell Wilson thing.
Yeah, well, all that matters right now is Pittsburgh starts 1-0, which is a surprise to me. I thought they were going to struggle this year. I thought Atlanta was going to be great. I also thought that, Tua could hit a wide open Tyreek Hill. Couldn't do it over and over and over early in the game. The Miami Dolphins looked terrible in the beginning, but they still found a way to scratch and claw and get a win over the Jags 20-17, thanks to a walloping field goal as time expired to get the win. Big win for the Dolphins because I honestly kept watching it thinking, you know what, Frank's right. I've been sleeping on the Jags. The Jags are better than I expected them to be. And then somehow as the game melted on, the Jags melted away and the Dolphins got hot at the right time.
Yeah, the offense just disappeared in the second half for the Jaguars, and that's on Trevor Lawrence. Again, we're critical about him, but he's a $55 million quarterback. Like, we should be critical about him. They couldn't get anything done in the second half. Now, it's not all his fault. There was a sequence in the game where Travis Etienne's going in for a touchdown. It's going to be 24-7, and it's kind of lights out at that point. He fumbles, and right away Tyreek Hill hits an 80-yard touchdown, which he can do. He's Tyreek Hill. So that instead of being up 24-7, now it's 17-10, I believe. So it was, or 17-14, whatever it was a huge 14-point swing, a huge swing in that game, and that kind of determined it. But at the same time, I felt okay about the Jaguars. They played really, really tough. They should have probably won that game. But at the same time, you got to finish. Like, you let Miami hang around long enough that Tua got hot. Like you said, he wasn't good early. He's really good late. He ends up with more than 300 yards. He's still probably the most underrated player in the NFL because nobody wants to give him much credit. But he could find Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle over and over and over again, and that's what he did in this game. Devin Achane, a big part of their passing game too, and he will be all season. This Alva team's still fun. I'm still not completely sold on them being like a playoff team or anything again, but they're going to be fun. They're going to be good, and they got a huge win here. I
do think it ends early, the narrative that they can't beat good teams, because the Jags look like a good team. Like, this wasn't the Jags being a bad football
winning record.
Yeah. So I think for the conversation last year, well, Dolphins only beat up on the lower class. I think that this was not that at all. So, and you're also right. Like, if that 80-yard touchdown, just so brilliant to see the way they scheme up Tyreek Hill getting over there. And it felt like the Jags were taking the right angle. They just got outrun. His turbo button's faster than everybody else's. Yeah. So good for the Dolphins on getting the big win. One of my favorite games of the day, obviously one of the most entertaining games of the day, was Houston, Indianapolis. We knew that this game was going to be a real prove-it moment. I thought it was really incredible. I mean, Houston gets a 29-27 win. I think Anthony Richardson, by the way, I was an idiot and didn't play him on my fantasy team. He's on my bench, and that was stupid of me. Anthony Richardson was exactly what I thought he would be. Like, he had some throws that were, oh my God, and then he had some throws that were, oh my God. Like, it's just, it's funny. Mm-hmm. Like, there's just this evolution of Anthony Richardson that's going to have to happen.
Yeah, and there's some things like this game was close, obviously, but there's some troubling things about the Colts coming out of this game. And the fact is, Anthony Richardson, he completed 9 of 19 passes, and basically 3 of his passes contributed, I think, 171 of his 211 yards or something like that. I might be a yard or two off, but basically it was 3 big passes. And that's all he did the entire game in the passing game. That's just not, it's great for him to hit big passes. That touchdown pass to Alec Pierce. I was in the middle of Buffalo Wild Wings, by the way, and beautiful suburban Denver, Colorado, and I screamed out, "Holy blank!" Like it was unbelievable throw by Anthony Richardson that I don't think many people on this planet can make. He does that, but you need to have more than 9 completions and basically just 3 completions. Hey, they got nothing going in the passing game, in a game they really could have won. And it was a big game, obviously, in the division and all that. And you just wonder, and like their rookie first round pick Latu does literally nothing in this game. And their cornerbacks struggle again. And the defense gives up 159 yards to Joe Mixon. And you just come out of this game, it's like, one way you can look at it is, the Colts lost by 2 to the Texans. It was really close. Could have gone either way. Yeah, that's fair. That's fine. But I come out of this game pretty concerned about the Colts because honestly, like Anthony Richardson is a great talent, but you can't complete 9 passes in a game like this. Like he has to be better for the Colts to get where they want to go.
Well, and we wondered how the balance would look for C.J. Stroud in this offense. C.J. Stroud 24-32. 2 touchdowns, really effective game yet again. Joe Mixon, 30 carries. Somebody else I left on my bench in fantasy. 30 carries. I mean,
Fitz,
he got a huge.
Well,
I wasn't sure. I just didn't know what to expect of this game. So I was like, you know what? I don't know what the load share is going to work. Are they going to throw the ball? I wasn't sure. So Mixon gets 30 carries out of this game and absolutely dominates. Like, I watched this and thought, for all of the conversation about Texans and all the hype this year, they lived up to it. Like, I got to give them credit. Like, if we talk about the teams that look like, they are set to be very good, the Texans were absolutely that.
Yeah, they look great. Mixon had a lot of juice. He looked really good in this game. Stephon Diggs with 2 touchdowns. He's going to be great. Nico Collins is awesome as a number 1. Like, there's a lot to like about this Texans team. They gave up 3 big pass plays. Anthony Richardson, he could just throw it over your head sometimes, and it happened. But yeah, a good win for the Texans. Look, it doesn't matter how it happened for them. You go on the road. You're facing one of your division rivals. You get a win to start the season. Great debut for them. And their 2 big moves this offseason were trades. One for Diggs, one for Mixon. Looking pretty good right now. Yeah.
Now, speaking of looking pretty good, in the first half, the Arizona Cardinals looked pretty good. It looked like all of a sudden the Arizona Cardinals were going to do the unthinkable, and maybe the Bills just suck. Like, I was sitting there with a buddy, and he was like, "Are the Bills just bad? Like, are the Bills now not any good?" It looked like that for a minute, but all of a sudden, then Josh Allen gets hot. Everything goes the way the Bills usually have things go. They get the 34-28 win over Arizona, which I got to give you a little credit for. You said this year, look for Arizona to lose a bunch of games in shootouts. Like, it's just this defense is going to give up a bunch of points. They're going to score a bunch of points. It's exactly what this game was.
Yeah, and Cardinals defense played pretty well for the first half. I was like, wow, maybe they're better than expected. And then Josh Allen just kind of took over, and he can do that. Like, he's that kind of player. I think the most startling thing out of this game was Marvin Harrison, 1 catch for 4 yards, had a bad drop, which I couldn't tell you how many passes he dropped at Ohio State, but it wasn't many.
0. Zero. So that was my favorite Marvin Harrison Jr. stat as a Biletnikoff Award voter, humble brag, is that if you look at the last 2 years of his college career, he was credited combined in those 2 years with 0 drops. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, you're right, right there, hits him in the hands and just plunk on the ground. I was stunned to see that happen.
Yeah. And I mean, look, on one hand, it's like a game the Cardinals should lose. Like, when you're really taking an honest look at the schedule, you're not marking the at Bills as a 50-50. Like, you you're probably going to lose that game, and they did. But the way it went, losing the lead, it's got to be a little disheartening for them to go back to Arizona. They got to, I assume Marvin Harrison is going to be just fine because he's an unbelievable talent, but a little troubling. A guy goes 1 catch, 4 yards in his debut. I guess good job by the Bills to keep him off the board, but they're going to have to get him going. All in all, though, this was just a Josh Allen game. This was just Josh Allen. To quote the late great Therese Paylor, it was a over my dead body game for Josh Allen. He just said, I'm not letting us lose this game. Kind of took it over. That's what Josh Allen can do. And now they're 1-0 because, if they were 0-1, we would have talked about them 20, 30 minutes ago because we would have been like, oh my God, what's wrong with the Bills?
Especially considering the fact that they didn't necessarily run the ball with any great, oh my God, from James Cook. And, and then you look at the receiving splits. Keon Coleman gets 4 catches.
It seemed like 28 different guys caught passes for the Bills today. I think James Lofton caught one. Andre Reed grabbed one. Like, I mean, it was unbelievable, all the different guys Josh Allen got involved today.
But I keep thinking about what Damian Harris, former Bill, said to us during the NFL draft when I said, man, they got to draft a wide receiver. And he said, he's like, hey, internally within the organization, they believe Josh Allen will account for the same number of touchdowns. They believe he's a guy that will account for 40 touchdowns no matter who's around him. And guess what? 2 in the air, 2 on the ground, 4 down. Like, I watched that whole time thinking of what Damian said, and I'm like, yep, you can see exactly why they believe that. They know that they can get that many touchdowns out of Josh Allen over and over and over again because Josh is a superstar. One quarterback that wants to be a superstar, Caleb Williams. And you and I said that the Titans versus the Bears would be one of the most interesting matchups of the entire day because we didn't know what to expect. And I have to read this to everybody because I think it's the most incredible portion of a huge win. The Bears get a big come from behind win. But if I told you on Friday that Caleb Williams would be 14 of 29 for 93 yards with a 55 passer rating and 5 rushes for 15 yards. Caleb Williams would be non-consequential to the outcome and throw for less than 100 yards. You'd be losing your mind. That's exactly what happened, and the Bears still get the win.
I know. I mean, it's hard to play quarterback in the NFL as a rookie. And I think the Bears even got caught up into Caleb Williams' hype a little bit because when you look at this game, and some of this was game script having to do with it, but DeAndre Swift and Khalil Herbert combined for 12 carries. I think, and we saw Caleb Williams running around a lot like he had to do at USC, trying to do too much. And I think the Bears have to come in on Monday and say, okay, we're a little too over our skis with the kid. Let's help him out by handing it to Khalil Herbert maybe 15 times, getting the running game going with him and Swift, and not putting Caleb in a position where he has to do it all. I understand why they would have come into this game really excited with their bright, shiny new toy, but it takes time for everybody, and Caleb included, but they get out of this with a win. And I'll tell you something, that Will Levis interception is one of the worst plays I've seen a quarterback make in years. Like I gasped when he like backhand flipped it. And Tyreek Stevenson said after the game, he's like, as soon as that ball went up in the air, I'm like, I'm taking this 6 to the house. And he did. That was the game. Like the Titans played pretty well in this game. They probably should have won in this game, but they let the Bears hang around, and Levis makes that absolutely inexplicable interception that gets returned for a touchdown that ends up being the winning points.
Man, that was Will in college.
Do that.
Will did the same thing in college. If you go back and watch some of those games he played in college.
I don't think this is going to be why if he's not their quarterback next year. That's why. Because you just can't live with mistakes like that. They lost a winnable game here because Will Levis lost his mind on one play and tried to backhand flip it like 20 yards to whoever receiver he's trying to get it to.
This is where Titans fans don't tell me that Will Levis is still basically a rookie because he didn't play all of his. No. Will Levis is now in the 2nd year of his career. And today, right now, Will Levis does not look like a playoff caliber quarterback. Like this isn't the guy. Like there is some level of, we want these playmakers at quarterback to go out and be able to do incredible things so that everybody's like, oh my God, look at the athleticism of a quarterback. Well, not everybody can actually do that. And this is all the way back to college, who Will Levis has been. He'll make a great throw and then he'll throw into triple coverage. And you're thinking, what the hell are you doing? You're going to cost our team a game. And that's exactly what happened here. The Titans were good enough to win this game. Will Levis was not good enough to win this game. And if that's the trend moving forward, at least the Titans have surrounded whoever is their future quarterback with talent. But man, if I'm a Titans fan today, I feel pretty bummed out looking around, realizing that this could be a very long year because my young quarterback just ain't good enough.
Yeah, it's just the mistakes. He's good enough to make plays, just you got to cut out the mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, easier
egregious
said than done.
Mistakes. That was so bad. That's so bad.
I remember a game against when he was quarterback at Kentucky. There was a game against Vandy, and we were doing the highlights on it at ESPN, and I had to read it at the time. And I just remember as I was reading the highlight, I stopped and I said, "Why did he throw that ball? Like that's just all the way back to college who he has been." So I don't think you can fix that if that's just part of how you're wired. Speaking of things, maybe you can't fix. Bryce Young.
Oh, no.
I mean, it took us a long time to get to your worst take of the week because you were high on the Carolina being able to beat New Orleans. Mm-hmm. New Orleans wins 47-10. Bryce Young throws a pick on his first pass attempt of the season, and you just felt the air deflate out of Carolina. Carolina got their butts whooped. And like Frank, I looked at this. I don't know. It's one game. I know it's overreaction. I looked at it one game and I thought, man, let's remember that the Panthers technically have had the first pick in the draft two straight years. It could be three. I mean, it's just that was a level of trash on the field that just I was stunned to see.
I like to be patient with everything because I don't like the whole microwave development of quarterbacks. You got to be good right away or you stink. And I held out hope for Bryce Young. We talked about it Friday when I said I think the Panthers going to win this game. Oh boy, did that turn out bad. Because I just thought, okay, now he's in a better situation. Canales is there. They bought guys for the offensive line. They drafted some skill position talent. They got Deontay Johnson. Let's give Bryce a chance. And I'm sitting there during the first half, and they're down 30-zip, and I'm saying, oh my God, he's a bust. And I'm sorry to say that. And maybe he's not. Maybe he'll resurrect his career. Maybe he's going to have a good long career. But how can you think anything other than that right now? They were so bad. Here's his line. 13 of 30, 161 yards, and a 32.8 passer rating. I don't think the Saints are that good. Like, I know they won today, and hats off to them. I was really, really wrong about you, New Orleans. But I don't believe the Saints team is going to go on and win 11 games. Like, I just think that the Panthers are this bad. And I hate to say it, but I think Bryce Young might be this bad. Like, there's just been nothing. I just want some glimmer of hope from Bryce Young here, and there's just nothing. It's just, he was so bad today. And that Panthers team was so bad today. And Bryce Young doesn't have as many excuses now, right? Like last year it was, oh, the situation's terrible, and it certainly was. This year, no, they invested a lot in that offense. And if you're David Tepper, who is impatient even in decent times, you're sitting there saying, what am I paying for? What did we go do? Like, I like Dave Canales is one game into his career. It's got to be like, I hope David Tepper doesn't come by my office today. Like everything was so bad about the Panthers that I don't think like there's no hyperbole here. They look like the worst team in football, and it wasn't even close.
Now imagine how much that's magnified when Minnesota goes out and wins 28-6 and Sam Darnold looks like he's resurged, right? Like Sam Darnold, like who they gave up on, right? Like Sam Darnold, who I've been like, I feel like Nate Tice has poisoned the well and everybody's high on Sam Darnold. You were too. Sam Darnold looked like a golden god against the Giants, and the Giants look like they are living in their own big old barrel of suck. I saw the videos here where there are fans burning Daniel Jones jerseys. By the way, don't burn your Daniel Jones jerseys, you idiots. Give them to charity. Like there are people out there that actually need clothes. Burning jerseys is about the stupidest thing you could possibly do. That being said, the Giants look just dreadful.
Yeah, I guess I should have said the Panthers look like the worst team in football by a mile because I did watch the Giants too. And all I kept thinking was their top three guys in that organization are the three most important positions, whatever. General manager Joe Shane, who went against John Mara when John Mara said, hey, you really don't want to see Saquon Barkley go to the Eagles? I wouldn't sleep that well, Joe. And Joe's like, yeah, no problem. It'll be fine. Well, Saquon Barkley looked pretty good on Friday. And then Brad Daboll, who is gone from like the king of New York 2 years ago to like, I'm on the hot seat already. And then Daniel Jones, who I can't imagine, like, again, it's one game. He could have a great season, but we all know he's probably not. And the way he played today, you're like, yeah, they got to find a new quarterback next year, too. I don't know if any of these three guys are back next year. I get it. One game, we're overreacting, blah, blah, blah. But I think we both are in agreement that it's not going to get much better for the Giants this year.
No, it was a nice win for Minnesota, who we both agree is going to be better than everybody thinks. The Giants fans, just start watching Quinn Ewers every week, and then maybe find some hope in that. All right, we got the late games to get to, including one game that I guess contractually I'm obligated to talk about. We'll do that when we come back. Frank, I've held off long enough. It was an ugly day for me. I'm not going to lie. The Chargers get a 22-10 win over my beloved Raiders in a game that was close until the very end. But in a game that saw the Raiders turn the ball over multiple times, saw the Raiders turn the ball over on downs, miss a field goal. Like there were so many opportunities for the Raiders to get it done. Their defense played inspired football until they ran out of gas late in the second half. The defense was beautiful, but it's time for us to have this one raging debate because for the first time since 2016, a team trailing in the fourth quarter in positive territory, meaning past the 50-yard line, elected to punt on 4th and 1. All right.
How do you justify this, Fitz? Come on.
So the only reason this was because my immediate reaction was, what are you doing? And then I sat there and I thought, wait, earlier in the game, in the first drive, 2nd and 2, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, they were stopped. A couple of drives later, 2nd and 2, they were stopped. 3rd and 1, they were stopped. They never once in this game converted a short yardage situation. So the only thing I would say is if you haven't been able to convert 2nd and 3rd and 2 or shorter, or 4th and 2 and shorter, if you're 0 for 7, I think they were at that point on that, is this the time you're suddenly going to get it right? Offensive line was dreadful. At least if you punt it, maybe Max Crosby and those guys, because they punted it earlier, they got the ball back at midfield. Maybe you're just betting that, hey, we can just punt it, get the ball back. We'll try and live to see another day.
Again, about 7 minutes left. They're down 6, 4th and 1 at the Chargers, 43-yard line, and they punt. I can't. I get it. Yeah, you stunk in short yardage situations before. It's still inexcusable. And for a guy, Antonio Pierce, we all know he can motivate. Like, that's his calling card, right? But that's a big part of what these guys do. Like, a head coach needs to motivate his players. He needs to have them on the side. Needs a locker room, all that kind of stuff. You also have to manage a game. And I thought he blew it. Like, this was just terrible. As much as I railed on Zach Taylor and why the heck is he punting, this was, I think, even worse. Like, again, there's a reason nobody since 2016 in this situation has punted, because it's just inexcusable. Like, if you can't get a yard, just wave the white flag. Like, just call the rest of the season off, like forfeit the rest of the games. Like, if you are saying to yourself, we cannot pick up one single yard right here because we have failed before, then you're going to go like 2-15 this year. Like, really, seriously, like, if you have no confidence in getting one single yard in the opponent's positive territory when you're down 6 points at their 43-yard line, I just thought it was awful. And it's honestly a bad look for Antonio Pierce. Again, great motivator, had that Raiders team play really, really hard last year, obviously deserved the job, but he's kind of on a we'll see basis, right? Like, I don't think anybody thinks he's just locked in for the next 10 years as Raiders coach. He's got to prove himself. And I thought this was an egregious mistake in this game. That, look, it's not the only reason they lost, but it was still an egregious mistake. And he can't do this. You gotta master that part of the game too.
The Raiders' offensive line was awful. Gardner Minshew was stat line looks better than Gardner was in this game. This is going to be a painful team to watch on the offensive side of the ball for a minute. I don't know how they get it right, but they're going to have to get it right because the defense, again, was inspired. And I feel like I'm going to have a season full of 5-6 point losses over and over and over again, because the number now is like, once a team has scored 15 or 16 points, I don't know how the Raiders score that many on them. This looks like a dreadful offense. Speaking of dreadful, first half, I've never seen this. Maybe you have. Seattle gave up 2 safeties in the first half. Geno Smith looked like he forgot how to football in the first half. This was an ugly start, but the Seahawks survived the ugliness, and they get a 26-20 win over the Broncos in a game that I'm still shaking my head saying, man, how the hell did you do that? Like, everything went wrong for so much of this game. For Seattle to still get a win, I think is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was a fine win for them. Honestly, a lot of it's just Bo Nix. Like, he struggled. And it's funny, my Colorado people, I love you, but the overreaction of Bo Nix the last couple of weeks out here was just insane. Like, there were people actually telling me, like, I just get so frustrated when draft experts won't take the L on Bo Nix. Like, a guy, he's played 30 snaps, or he's thrown 30 passes against not one defensive starter in the preseason. Like, why should anybody take an L on that? Like, people thought literally like Bo Nix had landed it from alien ship at the 50-yard line and cured cancer the same day. It was crazy overreaction. And he got brought back down to earth in a big way. 42 attempts, 136 yards. It's just not NFL football. Like, his yards per attempt was under 3 for most of the game. He's going to be fine. Like, I think Bo Nix is a good fit with Sean Payton, but for everybody who thought like, oh, Broncos over 6.5 is the lock of the century, probably not. Bo Nix is going to struggle. There's a reason he was the 6th quarterback drafted in this draft class. There's a reason the Broncos weren't very good last year. Probably won't be very good this year. It's going to be a learning experience for the Broncos and Bo Nix. He'll be fine, but just the people who thought he was just going to be, throwing for 350 yards out of the gate every single game. I get it. I get why. Broncos fans haven't had good quarterback play in what seems like a million years now. Nix will be fine, but it's not a instant breakfast here. It's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think the Broncos look like the Broncos are going to look a lot of this year. They're just a bad football team, and that's okay. It's going to take a minute to try and get it right. But Seattle gets a big
squeeze wins out
win.
of them. Like, they'll win more games this year because of Sean Payton. And Bo Nix will have his days in the sun, but this wasn't like, oh my God, the Broncos are going to the playoffs. No, probably not this year.
One more game to break down, and it's one with the team you were hot on. Has it changed your opinion? Tampa Bay gets a 37-20 win over Washington. Obviously, we understand that a lot of the rookie quarterback woes for Washington as well. Did this change any of your thoughts on the Commanders?
In one way, I kept thinking everybody talked about how our secondary was bad, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, maybe. But Dan Quinn is a really, really good defensive coach, and he's gonna improve that. Just Dan Quinn himself will get that secondary playing better. Nope. Mike Evans, 2 touchdowns. Chris Godwin with a touchdown. Jalen McMillan, a rookie, with a touchdown. Baker Mayfield shredded them. And it's like, you're getting shredded by Baker Mayfield. You're going to get shredded by just about everybody. Like, not that Baker Mayfield's bad or anything, but come on. Like, it was just kind of embarrassing for that defense. And probably over my skis a little bit with my Commanders. I'll say this about Jaden. He played just fine. Like, I thought he was perfectly reasonable. It was kind of weirdly enough, a boring game for Jaden Daniels, where I didn't look back and say, ooh, he played really good, or ooh, he played really bad. I just was kind of like, he was there. Like, they obviously have a lot of concerns about that offensive line, because everything, especially early on when the game was still competitive, was just get the ball out of your hands as quick as possible. I mean, there was nothing going downfield there, and that's fine. I get it, but if they don't open up the offense a little bit, and maybe they just can't because the offensive line is bad, and then I just think this is kind of who the Commanders are going to be. Like, they're just trying to protect Daniels from getting ruined, which I do get, but you're not going to win many football games playing the way they did on Sunday.
I'll eat a little crow, too, on Baker. I wondered if Dave Canales being gone would make him take a step back. He looked even more in control, more efficient, was quick to get rid of the football.
Very confident.
Really accurate.
He's always confident,
like, it's just,
but yeah.
But there's an ease to it right now. I mean, I think Baker and this offense showed you that they're going to be legit throughout the course of the year. I know it's one game, so let's see. But I think it was an impressive game. All right, Monday Night Football obviously going to happen before we hang out again together. New York at San Francisco. The 49ers favored by 4. Quick thoughts, who you got in this one?
I got the Jets. I think the Jets win straight up. Like, I did pick the Panthers win straight up, so keep that in mind when you go into the betting window there. But I just think the Jets are really motivated to show we're a different team. We got a quarterback now. We can compete. And as much as Kirk Cousins' game did worry me, as you talk about 3,755-year-old quarterbacks coming off an Achilles, I do think Aaron Rodgers is just kind of an exception. He'll be better. I think it's going to be one of those like 14-10 type of games. It's going to be a fun one, like an old school street fight. I'm really looking forward to this game.
Yeah, I'm going to take the 49ers in this one because I just don't trust quarterbacks coming off that sort of an injury. I don't trust exceptions to the rule, but I am interested to see. Trent Williams has missed so much. And what did we see today? Offensive linemen didn't look like they were peak, right? So is Trent Williams able to come in and play right away at the highest possible level? Because if he can't, that defense is going to make problems for Brock Purdy. So I think it's a really interesting matchup. How healthy is Christian McCaffrey? There's a lot that goes into it that I think makes me a little nervous about the 49ers, but I think the 49ers win. I think that number, that 4 number for all you dabblers, feels a little thick to me. Like I'd much rather have a lighter number than that. This feels like a field goal game to me, so I'm not playing it, but I think the 49ers win outright. Shout out to Stone, our producer extraordinaire, staying up to the wee hours of the evening to make sure that this show gets done and that we sound sensual. Be sure to hang out with us Wednesday. Jory's back. You can follow us on social media at Jason Fitz, at Yahoo Schwab. You know all of these things. But Inside Coverage will be back with you Wednesday. We had Jory, and then Friday we had C-Rob. So be sure you're subscribing to rate and review the podcast. Make sure you tell your friends, your family, tell enemies, tell everybody you know to hang out with us every single week. Week 1 has been such a delight. I can't wait to overreact to week 2. Thanks for hanging out with us.